60 Minutes is one of the long-running CBS program for the last 45 years, I guess. And the organizers have tried to model it in this particular, around this 60 Minutes program, which is a very reporter-centric program, which has done quite good reporting and has been quite controversial often. So to fit into that mode is not so easy. Now, when first IPS contacted me, they told me that I have to talk about SDG. So my immediate association with SDG was the Sustainable Development Goals. Then my assistant runs up to me and says, no, this is a South Asian conference, this is not that SDG. Then I thought it must be SAARC Development Goals. And so I prepared on the SAARC Development Goals. And then my assistant comes running and he says that, no, it is neither SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, nor the SAARC Development Goal, it is Southern Development Goals. So I start wondering what it is all about, till I come to Colombo and find it is about Southern Development Goals. So you see, it has, my whole preparation has gone through a confusing time. Since it is about the SDGs, you know, the Sustainable Development Goal is currently being debated globally. It is supposed to be the successor goals of the post-2015 when the MDGs come to an end for the time being. And the major difference from the these SDGs from the MDGs would be that we move from a development-oriented framework to a more universal framework and go to issues which are more relevant for all countries of the world instead of being very specific to the countries of low income or structurally handicapped or countries with special needs. So that's a major debate which is currently going on between how do we accommodate within an international development framework the concerns of specially handicapped countries into an universal one, particularly when you bring in the real issues like climate change, and we are not quite sure how the balance between the rights and responsibilities will be accommodated over there. I think it is also relevant for us to remember the SAARC development goals in this context, because since it is a South Asian platform, and you all may have forgotten by now that there was an independent commission on poverty alleviation in South Asia, which came out with a set of recommendations, and in 2005, in Dhaka, the ministerial meeting adopted the South Asian development goals in 4 areas: livelihood, health, education, and climate. And there were 22 indicators. And there was an interim report in 2010 in Bhutan, and thereafter somehow it dissipated somewhere, lost in the oblivion. So if you ask anybody now what is happening with the South Asian Development Goal, I'm not quite sure that people will remember and how it has been accommodated in the national plans in these countries and thereafter. Now, so if that SDGs and others is gone, and if you come to the Southern Development Goals, and what does it actually mean? If you fall back on the criticisms of the MDGs and the success, we know how it has catalyzed the development thinking in the world towards a much more focused attention toward poverty alleviation and other human development, paradigm-based development approach in 2000, the Millennium Moment as we refer to. And this thing has created a new momentum, no doubt about that, with its political support. But there are a number of criticism about the MDGs, and we know that it lacks some certain elements from macroeconomic approaches to the resource requirements, provisioning, and many other criticisms are there. But there is one particular criticism which I would like to pick up for this afternoon. At CPD, we have done a study, or a bibliographic review, and wanted to follow the post-MDG debate. And we found that 80% of all the contributions on post-MDG were coming from the North. And another 10% of the contributions were coming from the people from the South located in the North. So it is hardly only 10% of all the inputs, intellectual inputs, which are coming into this area, which is redefining the development goals in 2015, is basically without the inputs from the Southern people or the Southern intellectuals or the Southern think tanks, which are so located on the ground, who have more practical experience regarding what works, what doesn't work, is being very much not there. So it is basically an expression of knowledge asymmetry which is afflicting the whole debate, global debate which is going on. And what is a knowledge asymmetry at the end of the day? It's a perverse expression of the power asymmetry which we are experiencing globally as we go around. So how do you really correct that one? And that is all about the Southern perspectives about the development goals. The way you do it is that you connect the think tanks which are located in the South, which do have evidence-based research analysis capacities, and connect them to the global knowledge systems. This is what it's all about in that way. Very simply put, that you connect the research think tanks in the South into the highways of global debates which are currently going on. And thereafter, also, in a reverse way, you bring those global debates and try to interpret them within the concrete context of our countries. Since I have already spoken for 6 minutes, let me put my last 3.5 minutes into what are some of these issues which we'd like to highlight when we talk about the Southern perspectives on the international development goals in the post-2015. The first important one is that when we go for a universal framework, are we going to miss out the concerns of the disadvantaged? How and which way and how, in what indicators and means will integrate those concerns, those in a framework which not necessarily does not take account of the specific disadvantages of certain countries, including the countries in conflict, the fragile states, the least developed countries, the island states, and many other things. The second the issue which has come up very strongly about the priorities. What would be the priorities? Yesterday I tried to mention that education has come out very strongly amongst the priorities. Quality education is definitely one, but we are seeing new things coming in, and climate is a case in point. But bringing in climate is, of course, a priority because it affects everybody across the world. But what indicators of those climate change will be there is very critical. Whether the emission control, which we cannot do through the UNFCCC, can do it now over here. So the politics of climate change will become very important, as we will see in other cases. There will be also this whole issue of how do you really flexibly accommodate an international goal system into your national priorities? Because the national priorities, the sequencing of those deals will be quite important and keep the autonomy of national planning as we move forward. The issue of others which is very important is resource requirement. By now it is very much accepted that if MDG was more about international development cooperation, which is based on foreign aid and its utilization, the future post-MDG will be basically beyond foreign aid. Foreign aid is important, but this is not all. What are the other elements we are talking about? Domestic resource mobilization will be definitely one. Foreign direct investment, another. Remittances are going to play a major role over there. Innovative financing, sovereign bonds, and many other issues, sovereign wealth funds and other issues will be very much critically there. And to mention the least, the South-South cooperation will be a major element of that particular new resource requirement package which we are talking about. So we are talking about a much more broader canvas of resourcing or provisioning of all these things which we see in the future. How does this all lay out in our face? The government and the UN system has produced 3-4 major inputs. The high-level panel, which was led by the three co-chairs, Cameron, the Liberian lady president, and the Indonesian president. Then there was the Jeffrey Sachs Sustainable Development Networks report. Then the Global Compact report coming from the private sector. And of course, there are UNDP, task team, the regional commissions, the My World surveys, which have all come in. In September, we are waiting for the UN Secretary General to lay out the first outline of those, what is going to be the post-2015 framework. And at the same time, open working groups which have been coming from the Rio Plus 20 are also working on special works. And we will see where do we take it from September onward after the UN General Assembly with a new process of negotiation as it comes through. Will we have something which can be worked out? Will it be of high ambition? Or it will be reduced to the lowest common denominator? That is something which will be fought in the coming days. In between, Can we have a Southern Development Goals, which is really totally coming from the BRICS? If you look at the last meeting, which took place in Durban, whether they are alluding to any Southern Development Goals coming from the BRIC countries under the leadership, that will be another one which we will have to wait for. The final point is that whatever goal we put forward in there, at the end of the day, whether we'll have adequate political will and support, that is going to define all these things. Finally, of course, that political will be much more necessary in our own countries at the end of the day. It will be a national endeavor which can only be supported by international partnership, not the other way around. Thank you for the attention.